Her lipstick was smudged. That was the first thing I noticed. It wasn't like she had kissed anyone, not yet. But it had that uneven edge on her bottom lip, the kind that happens when you laugh too hard while drinking wine, or when someone brushes your face without asking. And she was laughing. Too loud, too much, too often. They were standing near the hotel terrace when I saw him do it. 2 fingers. One motion. Just under her chin. Not forceful, not even obvious. But intimate. Like they'd done it before. Like she expected it. Like I wasn't standing 15 feet away with a drink I didn't want and a smile I could no longer hold. And she didn't pull back. She just tilted her head slightly. Like she was curious. Like she wanted more. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not really. She didn't invite me outright. Just mentioned the event in passing. Oh, the company's throwing another summit thing, but it's mostly suits and speeches. You'd hate it. I offered to go anyway. She hesitated, then shrugged, said I could come if I wanted. So I did, with a cheap tie and polished shoes, like some amateur detective dressing for his own humiliation. And now I was watching my wife, in a dress I'd never seen before, letting a man in a tailored jacket touch her face like it was his to navigate. He was younger than I expected, not the gray-haired executive type. No, this guy looked like a magazine ad brought to life. Crisp jawline, designer stubble, that fake humble charisma that makes people mistake arrogance for confidence. I didn't know his name yet. I hadn't been introduced, but I knew everything I needed to. I watched her lean closer when he whispered something. Her hand grazed his forearm. Not accidental. No, deliberate. A signal. And then, God help me, she laughed in a way I hadn't heard in months. That laugh, the one she used to reserve for me, when we'd play cards in bed or argue over movie trivia. The one that made her eyes close slightly and her hand slap the table. It had been gone for so long, I forgot how much it hurt to hear it from across the room, especially when it wasn't meant for me. Someone clinked a glass nearby, and the crowd turned toward a makeshift stage. A senior partner started thanking everyone for a record-breaking quarter. No one clapped louder than him, the man with his fingers still close to my wife's skin. I finally moved, slowly, toward them. Each step felt like I was sinking. Brenna noticed me when I was about 10 feet away. Her expression flickered, not with guilt, not even with surprise, but with something worse. Annoyance. And he, that walking cologne ad, turned to me and smirked like I was just a misplaced detail in his night. Oh, he said casually. Didn't know she brought her husband. He said it like I was an accessory. A footnote. Brenna said nothing. She didn't deny me, but she didn't defend me either. And that silence? It was louder than anything else that night. I didn't confront him. Not yet. But I didn't leave either. I stood there with my heart bleeding through my collar, realizing something I hadn't wanted to admit for months. This wasn't a workplace crush. This wasn't a colleague being too friendly. This was rehearsed, refined, and far from over. The ride home was silent. Not the comforting, end of a long day kind of silence. No, it was tight, stale, like all the oxygen had been used up back at the party. She stared out the window, scrolling through her phone like I wasn't even driving. Like I was her Uber driver. Like she wasn't sitting next to her husband who had just watched another man treat her like an appetizer. I could have said something. I wanted to. My tongue felt like it was tied in knots. But I kept thinking, if I bring it up now, she'll just say I'm insecure. She'll say it was harmless. She'll say I imagined it. She'd said those things before. About smaller stuff. A text I wasn't supposed to see. A working lunch that ran too long. A coworker who liked all her posts, even the ones without hashtags. And I let it go because I was tired of fighting shadows. But that night, I didn't sleep. She passed out like nothing had happened, still wearing her earrings. I laid awake, staring at the ceiling fan, playing that moment over and over again. The fingers under her chin, the laugh, the smirk. I knew his name now. Grant. I'd heard it slip from her mouth earlier, even though she never formally introduced us. So the next day, I did something I've never done in 10 years of marriage. I followed her. Not in a creepy trench coat and binoculars kind of way. I just happened to take the day off. Told her the warehouse had a slow shift. She barely acknowledged it. Left the house at 8:17 sharp with that black leather bag she only used for presentations or overnights. I waited 10 minutes, then followed in my car. She didn't go to her office. That's the part that made my hands start shaking on the wheel. She drove straight to a hotel conference center on the edge of town, One of those upscale spots with a fancy restaurant attached and valet service that makes middle managers feel like CEOs. I parked 2 levels down in the underground lot and waited. An hour passed, then 2. I was starting to feel ridiculous when I saw her walk out of the elevator. And he was with her. Grant. They weren't holding hands. But they walked close. Too close. Shoulder brushing close. Laughing again. He touched the back of her neck for half a second before she looked around nervously and stepped away. Like she suddenly remembered someone could be watching. She didn't see me. I was crouched behind a black SUV, heart pounding so loud I thought it'd give me away. I knew I should leave. I knew I shouldn't be hiding behind a stranger's bumper like a teenager in a bad sitcom. But then I heard them stop and talk. And I wasn't prepared for what came next. He asked her something. I couldn't catch the beginning, but I heard her say, "Don't make me choose right now." Right now? That phrase lodged into my skull like a splinter. What was she choosing? Who? Between what and what? He leaned in, voice low but sharp. "You know he's going to figure it out eventually. He's not stupid." She paused, looked down at her shoes. "He's predictable. He never looks too deep." I actually felt my stomach turn. "He's predictable. He never looks too deep." She was talking about me. Like I was an appliance. A human background noise. Something that existed in her life, but wasn't really part of it. They started walking again. I stayed frozen until I couldn't hear their footsteps anymore. My legs were cramping. My chest felt crushed. And yet, I didn't cry. Not yet. I got back into my car, drove home, and stared at the front door for almost 10 minutes before I could turn the key. She came home late that night. Said there was a surprise meeting with clients from out of state. Last minute. Kissed me on the cheek like she was proud of her lie. I didn't say a word. But that night, while she showered, I opened her laptop. It was locked. She had changed the password. She'd never done that before. That was the moment I knew, not suspected, knew I wasn't crazy. Something was happening. And it wasn't just emotional. This wasn't a crush. It wasn't innocent. It was war. And Grant. He thought I'd back down. He thought I'd do what most men in my position do: eat it. Swallow it. Stay for the mortgage, the holidays, the image. He had no idea what I was capable of when I got quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before the storm. I spent the next 2 days floating through reality like I was underwater. Everything around me looked normal, but nothing felt real anymore. Every time she texted me some casual, "Hope your day's going okay," I felt like I was watching a magician pull a rabbit out of a hat, knowing the trick. Knowing the rabbit was already dead. Brenna had no idea I'd seen them. She thought I was still predictable, and that's what hurt most. Not the fact that she was lying, but that she trusted I'd never notice. That I'd be too comfortable, too soft, too stuck in my own routines to suspect her. I was the harmless husband, the accessory to her work events, the placeholder at dinner tables. So I decided to break character. On Friday, I told her I was helping a buddy move furniture across town. That gave me 6 hours, and I didn't waste them. I drove straight to her office building. Not to confront her. Not yet. I had another plan. One that made my hands sweat just thinking about it. I parked a block away, waited until I saw her walk out for lunch with 2 coworkers, and slipped into the lobby once the coast was clear. The receptionist, a girl with braids and a badge that read Kayla, was busy arguing with someone over a delivery charge. I walked right past her like I belonged there. 6th floor. Marketing department. Brenna's desk was the 3rd one by the window, behind a fake plant, and beside a dry erase board filled with inspirational nonsense. I slid behind it and clicked her mouse. The screen blinked to life. No password. She always said locking your computer was paranoid. Ironic. I didn't waste time. I opened her Google Calendar. Grant's name was everywhere. Lunch with G. Client review, Grant plus B. Offsite planning, G confirms. Twice a week. Sometimes 3. Always during late meetings she used to complain about. The color-coded events told a story more honest than anything she'd said to my face in months. Then I opened her downloads folder. And there it was. A hotel receipt. From the Prescott. Same night as the summit. Timestamped at 11:46 p.m. I stared at it for a full minute, my ears ringing like I'd just taken a punch. I remembered what she told me that night. You left early. Like I had been rude. Like I'd abandoned her. Meanwhile, she was checking in under her maiden name. I wasn't breathing right anymore. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. And then I made the mistake of checking one more folder. Screenshots. Most were normal. Client notes. social media mock-ups, a few memes. But then I found one that stopped everything cold. It was a photo of a man's hand, taken from above, resting on a thigh in a short navy skirt. Brenna's skirt. I remembered when she bought it. Said it was powerful but flirty. She never wore it around me. The caption read, "He always forgets to lock his hand in meetings, LOL." It was sent to someone named Lee Kissmark. And she'd replied, "Girl, stop. He's giving main character energy. You're the side quest smirking face." They were talking about Grant. And me. At the same time. I closed the window. My reflection in the screen looked pale. Old. How long had I been the side quest? I didn't copy the files. I didn't email them to myself. I couldn't. Something in me didn't want to make it permanent yet. It was like I still needed a few more hours of pretending everything could be fixed if I just said the right thing. I left the building without looking back, got in my car, and sat with my forehead against the steering wheel for maybe 20 minutes. And then I got a text from her. "Hey love, hope the move's going okay. Should I pick up dinner?" Face blowing a kiss. She was still pretending, still acting, still calling me love like she hadn't turned me into a stranger. That night, I didn't eat. I sat on the porch with my old notebook, the one I used to keep in college for dumb poems and half-finished grocery lists. I started writing things down. Not feelings. Names. Times. Patterns. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. But I knew this much. If I confronted her now, she'd deny everything. Twist it. Say it was exaggerated. Say I was spying. Say I was paranoid. So I had to be smarter than her. Smarter than him. If I wanted to win this war, I had to stop being the boring, forgettable husband. I had to become something else. I just didn't know what, yet. But I was getting closer. And the moment I made my decision, the doorbell rang. It was past 10 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. And neither, apparently, was she. I didn't get up right away when the doorbell rang. You know that feeling when your whole body just tightens? Like even your instincts are too stunned to move? That's what it felt like. Brenna was in the bathroom, blow-drying her hair. The TV was still playing some home renovation show we weren't watching, and the hallway light buzzed with a dying bulb. Everything else was quiet. The doorbell rang again. Not rushed. Not aggressive. Just firm. Like the person on the other side knew we were home and wasn't leaving until someone answered. I finally stood, half expecting it to be a delivery mistake or a neighbor with a dead battery. But when I opened the door, the man standing there wasn't holding a package, and he didn't look lost. He looked calm. Too calm. Mid-30s. Black button-down shirt. Khakis, pressed clean. No name tag. No clipboard. Just a confident expression and a phone in one hand. Like he'd been standing in courtroom hallways more often than street corners. And before I could even say hello, he said it. "Is Brenna home?" Not Mrs. Carter, not your wife, just Brenna. Like he knew her. Like he expected her. And the way he said it? It was the kind of tone you use when someone owes you something. I hesitated. "Who are you?" He blinked once, as if the question mildly irritated him. Then he smiled, not in a friendly way, but like he'd been waiting for me to ask. "I'm Austin," he said. No last name. No explanation. And he didn't follow up with a reason for being there. He just looked past me into the house, like I wasn't the important one. I stepped out and pulled the door half closed behind me. "She's busy. What's this about?" He chuckled under his breath. Then he leaned against the railing, looked off into the street, and said something that made my blood run cold. "Man, I figured she'd at least tell you first." "Tell me what?" "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even, but it cracked near the end. Austin looked at me again, this time more directly. "Look, I don't want to be in the middle of something. I just needed her signature on something. I assumed she would have prepped you already." "What kind of signature?" He shrugged. "Let her explain it." Then he handed me a folded envelope. My name wasn't on it, just hers, in handwriting I didn't recognize. Before I could ask anything else, Brenna appeared behind me, still in her robe, hair half damp. Her eyes went wide the second she saw him. "Austin." It wasn't shock. It was panic. He gave her a look. Not cruel. Not friendly. Just final. "Yeah, sorry to do this here, but I'm out of time." Then he turned and walked down the porch, not waiting for a goodbye. I turned to her. "Who was that?" She stared at the envelope in my hand. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to grab it, but couldn't decide how. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She was trying to calculate something. How much I'd seen, how much I'd heard, how much she could still twist. "Is this about work?" I asked. She looked me in the eye, and then lied. Yes, it's a client. I laughed. Out loud. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe she thought I'd buy that after the way she looked at him. Like a ghost. Like someone who'd just seen a buried memory claw its way out of the dirt. I didn't say anything else. I just handed her the envelope. She opened it in the kitchen while I stood across the room, pretending to scroll through my phone. She read it. Twice. Then folded it back up and shoved it into her purse. What did it say? I asked quietly. It's not important. She walked past me and up the stairs like we'd just discussed the weather. But I could see the way her hand clenched the railing. I could see the tremor in her leg as she climbed. That night, I waited until she fell asleep before I opened her purse. The envelope was gone. She'd moved it. I didn't know who Austin really was. But he wasn't just a client. And the way she reacted? He wasn't Grant either. This was something else. Another layer. Another secret. I wasn't chasing an affair anymore. I was chasing a past I never knew she had. And the closer I got, the more I started to wonder, had I ever actually known the woman I married at all? I didn't sleep the night Austin came to the door. I lay there next to her, listening to the rhythmic hum of her breathing while my eyes traced cracks in the ceiling that hadn't existed the day before. At 2:36 a.m., I reached over and touched her wrist. She didn't flinch. She was dead asleep, peaceful, even. It amazed me how easily liars could rest. Me? I felt like I was vibrating from the inside out. The next morning, I told her I was going to the hardware store. I left early and didn't come back for 5 hours. I had one goal, find Austin. Not to confront him, not yet. I just wanted to know who the hell he was. My marriage was in ruins, but suddenly it wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It wasn't just Grant. It wasn't just work flirtation or hotel receipts. It was layers. And the man who showed up on my porch at 10 p.m. with that unnerving calmness? He was hiding something. And so was Brenna. I started with the return address printed faintly on the envelope she tried to hide. I'd memorized it before she tucked it into her purse. It was from a law office across town. Small. Nondescript. One of those strip mall firms with a "We specialize in discretion" tagline and a logo that hadn't been updated since 2004. I parked across the street and waited. I didn't know what I was hoping for. Maybe to catch a glimpse of him. Maybe to see Brenna pull up again. But the parking lot stayed empty except for a rust-colored sedan with a cracked taillight. I got out of the car and walked in like I had an appointment. The receptionist, a woman with large glasses and tired eyes, looked up from her crossword and said, "You with the Armstrong case?" I said yes. I didn't even blink. Just said it like I meant it. She pointed down the hallway. "Room 3. You're a little early." I walked past the first 2 doors, heart pounding in my ears. When I reached room 3, I hesitated, not because I was scared, but because some part of me was terrified of what I'd learn once I walked in. But the door was already open. Inside was a man at a desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loose, typing something aggressively on a laptop. He didn't even look up when I stepped in. "Take a seat. We're still waiting on." Then he glanced at me, paused. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not. I'm Brenna's husband." Silence. Then something shifted in his posture. The way his shoulders dropped told me he wasn't surprised. Just annoyed. He stood slowly, closed the laptop, and gestured toward the chair across from him. Well, that was faster than I thought. I sat. He didn't offer his name again. I didn't ask. "What do you want to know?" he said flatly. "What was in that envelope?" He tapped his fingers on the table for a moment, then leaned forward, his voice quiet. "I'm not the bad guy here. Just so we're clear. You came to my house like a ghost and dropped off a mystery letter with my wife. I came to do my job." "What job is that exactly?" He sighed. "I was hired as an intermediary for a trust transfer." My stomach tightened. A trust? Yes, a considerable one. He pulled out a sheet of paper, slid it halfway across the table, but kept his finger on it so I couldn't yank it away. "Do you know the name Lewis Perrin?" I blinked. The name meant nothing to me. "He passed last year," Austin continued. "No children, no spouse, but he listed a secondary beneficiary, Brenna." I stared at him. "You're telling me my wife inherited a trust from a man I've never heard of?" Austin nodded once. "She was listed under her maiden name. The letter you saw was a confirmation of legal identity and her acknowledgement of the funds." "How much?" He hesitated, then said it. "Just shy of $480,000. I could barely breathe. "She never told me." I whispered. "Most people don't," he replied. But here's where it gets messy, eh? He pulled out another paper, this one with a copy of an old black and white photo. Brenna. And another man, mid-50s, salt and pepper beard, arm around her shoulders. That's Lewis. Taken 8 years ago. I shook my head. That's impossible. 8 years ago, she and I were already married. She never mentioned him. Ever. Austin looked at me and said something that turned my bones to ice. He wasn't just a family friend. According to the affidavit, they were involved. Quietly. Financially. What does that mean? It means she was receiving payments from him for years. Under the table. Monthly. I stared at the photo again. I didn't recognize the setting. The background was a vineyard. She told me she hated wine tours. I stood up, heart racing. Why are you telling me this? Because she signed a waiver yesterday. He tapped the envelope I never got to read. A non-disclosure and a disclaimer that you were not entitled to any portion of the trust in the event of separation. My knees almost gave out. She's preparing to leave me. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everything was already spinning. I left the office without another word. My car felt like a coffin. I sat in it for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my hands. It wasn't about Grant anymore. It wasn't even about cheating. Brenna was plotting an exit. She was packing her future with secrets and payoffs, and I was just the shell she was planning to shed. But I wasn't going to make it that easy. If she wanted to end things quietly, she picked the wrong man. I didn't go home right away after leaving Austin's office. I parked in the back of a forgotten gas station and just stared at my own reflection in the rearview mirror for what felt like an hour. I didn't recognize the man looking back. There was a tremble in my jaw, like I was shivering without cold, and my chest felt like a stretched rubber band that was one breath away from snapping. I was trying to decide what hurt more, the betrayal or the fact that she thought I'd never see it coming. She was planning it all behind my back, drawing dotted lines around our marriage like she was sketching an escape route, and she truly believed I would be too dull, too docile, too in love to connect the dots. But I had connected them, every single one. And now, for the first time since all of this started, I wasn't just reacting. I was calculating. By the time I walked through the front door that evening, I had a plan forming. I knew better than to accuse her. That wouldn't accomplish anything. She'd deflect, weaponize guilt, maybe even turn the whole thing into some "you never supported me" narrative that would make her feel like the victim. So I smiled. I kissed her on the temple. I asked how her day went. I let her lie to my face again because I wanted her comfortable. I needed her guard down. The more natural she felt, the easier it would be to take apart the life she thought she'd leave behind, piece by piece, without a sound. That weekend, I told her I was working extra shifts to help a buddy meet payroll at the warehouse. Truth was, I was at the county clerk's office filing temporary separation paperwork, unserved, just for now, and initiating a transfer of our joint assets into a trust under my name. She never cared about paperwork, never checked statements. She hated the financials and left it all to me years ago. That mistake was about to cost her more than she could imagine. I changed the auto-pay routing numbers for the mortgage, the car, even her student loans, which I, of course, had been paying since we got married. Everything was rerouted. Everything was restructured. Quietly. Legally. Entirely in line with marital property laws, especially since her trust from Lewis Perrin had been officially marked separate inheritance. She had tried to build a new life with someone else's money, never realizing I'd been managing the old one in silence for a decade. And I knew where all the valves were. She never noticed. She was too busy, working late, probably tangled up in Grant's cologne and rehearsed smiles, sending texts that started with "so last night," while I printed out years of phone records, hotel invoices, and deleted emails that were never really gone. But here's where it started to get interesting. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted collapse. So I started testing boundaries. Subtle, petty things, moving her keys to a different place, letting her think she was forgetful, telling her I saw a weird text flash on her phone even when I hadn't, just to watch her panic, asking offhandedly if she still talked to anyone from college, watching her eyes stutter before she answered. The lies were instinctual now, automatic, practiced. One night, I mentioned Lewis Perrin, casually, like it was trivia. "Didn't you say once you used to know someone named Lewis? From your old job?" She froze, just for half a second, but I caught it. "No, I don't think so," she said, not even blinking. That was the moment I knew I had her exactly where I wanted her. Still lying, still hiding, still believing the exit door she was building behind my back was invisible. And while she was dancing through her deception, I made one final call to a man I hadn't spoken to in years, my older cousin Alice. Corporate attorney, kind of a bulldog, the type of guy who doesn't ask why, just where and when. I told him everything. Not because I needed legal advice, I already had that, but because I needed a witness, a backup, a bulldozer waiting quietly behind the curtain. I sent him the files, the screenshots, the receipts, the trust disclosures, everything. He didn't say much at first, but 2 hours later, he texted me a single line. Get her to sign anything you put in front of her this week. Doesn't matter what. So the next morning, I printed out a basic asset liability update form, the kind she never reads, just signs because, ugh, adulting. I told her it was for the mortgage insurance. She didn't even glance at it. She signed, right there, in front of me. Black ink, soft smile, no questions. And just like that, I had a paper trail of her acknowledgement of my sole responsibility for 90% of our active accounts. Ellis said it wouldn't hold forever, but it would hold long enough. Long enough for the real move. The vanishing act. The detonation. And she wouldn't even know it happened until it was already done. Because while she was planning her clean exit from a husband she thought was too dull to defend himself, I had quietly arranged a separation that would leave her stunned, speechless, and legally cornered. The day before I disappeared, I watched her from the kitchen. She was laughing on the phone. Probably Grant. Or maybe someone else. She thought she'd won. But the next morning, when she walked into our closet and found it half empty, hangers swaying, drawers pulled, my watch gone, my laptop charger missing, that was when the game really began. I left at 4:12 a.m. It was still dark enough to feel invisible, but just light enough to see clearly. Like the world wanted me to witness every detail as I stepped out for the last time. No note, no explanation, just the shell of me gone, and everything else left behind in perfect, intentional disorder. I took the bare minimum. 3 changes of clothes, my passport, the flash drive, and the binder labeled, "If she tries to fight." I left my wedding ring on the bathroom sink, half submerged in a puddle from the leaky faucet she always said she'd fix, but never did. Fitting. On the kitchen table sat a folder with her name on it. Typed. Not handwritten. Just the way she always insisted formal things should look. Inside was a printed summary from my attorney. 4 pages, simple language, no emotional flourishes. Just facts. Line items. Dates. Confirmations of account transfers. A breakdown of the debt she'd inherit if she tried to contest the separation clause. And most importantly, a temporary freeze on joint property until the financial disclosure review concluded. Her trust fund? Safe, but locked from touching mine. Everything else? Mine, legally and cleanly, thanks to her own signatures. I didn't need to see her reaction. I didn't want to. I drove until the sun came up. I passed cities I hadn't visited in years, towns we used to laugh about getting lost in during weekend road trips. I didn't have a destination, just movement. Escape wasn't a location. It was motion. I booked a room under my middle name in a place where the receptionist didn't even bother asking questions. Just handed me the key and pointed toward the stairwell. The silence in that cheap motel room was louder than anything I'd heard in months. I lay down on the bed, stared at the water-stained ceiling, and waited for her to call. She didn't. Not that morning. Not that afternoon. But at 8:03 p.m., my phone finally buzzed. Missed call, Brenna. And then again. And again. Then a text. Curtis, where are you? What the hell is this? Call me. I didn't reply. I let the next 4 come in, each one more frantic, more broken, her tone switching from anger to confusion to panic like a thermostat spinning wildly out of control. By midnight, she sent a voice message. I listened to it once. Her voice was trembling. I could hear she'd been crying, the kind of crying you try to talk through but can't because your throat keeps closing. Kurt, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand what any of this is. I found the folder. You didn't even talk to me. You just left. What am I supposed to do? Please call me. Please just talk to me before this becomes permanent. But it already was. It had been permanent the moment I saw her let another man tilt her chin with 2 fingers. That night, I went for a walk outside the motel. The air was cold enough to sting. I passed by a late-night diner and watched a couple sitting in the corner booth, sharing fries, legs touching under the table. They were laughing about something. That full belly, throw your head back kind of laugh that used to be mine. I almost smiled. Almost. Then my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't her. It was Ellis. I picked up. She tried to move the trust money. My heart skipped. What? She contacted a financial advisor this afternoon. Tried to shift the assets under a private holding. Too late. Everything's flagged. I exhaled, but it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. She'll call a lawyer, I said. She already has, Ellis replied. But here's the thing. They can't undo her signatures. She trapped herself, Curtis. You don't even need to show the infidelity. You won the moment she underestimated you. I stood outside in that parking lot for a long time after we hung up. I wasn't celebrating. I was grieving. Not for her. For the version of me that had believed her for so long. I went back to my room. Pulled out the second envelope I'd prepared. The one I didn't leave on the table. The one I had addressed to Grant, with photos. Screenshots. The hotel bill. A letter, not from a lawyer, but from me. From the husband she painted as small. As predictable. As disposable. Inside was just one line at the bottom of the final page. You were never plan A. You were her insurance policy. Now that she has none, let's see if you still want her. I dropped it in the mail the next morning. By noon, Grant blocked her on every platform. And by that evening, she was calling me again, 13 times. She still hasn't heard my voice. But she will. Because tomorrow, I'm going back one last time. Not to talk. Not to fight. But to leave something on the doorstep that'll make everything else look tame in comparison. She played her last move months ago. Now it's checkmate. The house was smaller than I remembered. Isn't that funny? You live somewhere for years, and then walk away for a week, and suddenly, it doesn't feel like home anymore. It feels like a stage set, rooms arranged for memories that never really existed the way you thought they did. The curtains looked older. The porch creaked louder. Even the front door paint had started to chip in a way I hadn't noticed when I lived there. Or maybe I just never looked close enough. I stood on the sidewalk for a good 10 minutes before stepping up. My heart wasn't racing this time. I wasn't trembling or spiraling or clenching my fists. I wasn't thinking about revenge or exposing her or proving a point. Not anymore. I'd already won, in every way that mattered. But the deeper victory wasn't financial or legal or even moral. It was this feeling right now, the calm. I knocked once. No answer. Then I slipped the final letter under the door. No threats, no accusations, no venom. Just the truth. It was short. Honest. Not for her benefit, for mine. I'm not angry anymore. I just see you clearly now. And that's enough. You wanted someone more exciting, more ambitious, more charming. And maybe I wasn't those things. But I was real. I was yours. And you treated that like it was disposable. You said I'd never notice. But I did. You said I wouldn't understand. But I do. You said I'd never leave. But I have. Take care of yourself, Brenna. I hope you find whatever it is you're still chasing. But don't ever mistake my silence for weakness again. Because the man you underestimated is finally gone, for good. Asterisk, asterisk. And then I left. That was it. No dramatic confrontation. No final fight on the lawn. Just the sound of my shoes on the pavement as I walked away from the wreckage without looking back. I moved into a small apartment near the river. Nothing fancy, but it had big windows and quiet mornings. I started running again, eating better, reading more. I even got a dog, a ridiculous, loud golden retriever named Bucket who thinks every leaf is a personal threat. And here's the twist no one saw coming. I didn't become bitter. I didn't fall into the all women are the same trap. I didn't start swiping or numbing or spiraling. I just healed. Slowly, clumsily, but fully. A few months later, I met someone. Her name is Margot. We met at the bookstore, of all places. She corrected my pronunciation of an author's last name, and instead of being annoyed, I laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in a long, long time. We're not rushing anything. No promises. No labels. Just presence. And honesty. And warmth. Brenna did call one last time, weeks after everything settled. She left a voicemail. Said she regretted how it ended. Said she hoped I was okay. I never responded. Some endings deserve silence. But some endings, the right ones, lead to beginnings you never saw coming. And for the first time in years, I'm not looking over my shoulder. I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm just walking forward. And it feels good. Really, really good.